Today on the 10-12 podcast, I am joined by Joe Broback to talk Big 12 quarterbacks. It is the year of the quarterback in the Big 12 conference. We're going to touch on just about every expected starter in the conference this year. That includes Avery Johnson, Rocco Becht, Sam Leavitt, Caden Salter. The list goes on and on and on. Absolutely fantastic conversation with a Davey O'Brien Award voter. The guy knows quarterback. So stick around. Coming up, Big 12 quarterbacks on the 10-12 podcast.
With Robinhood, not only can you trade individual stocks and ETFs, you can also seamlessly buy and sell crypto at low costs. Trade all in one place. Get started now on Robinhood. Trading crypto involves significant risk. Crypto trading is offered through an account with Robinhood Crypto LLC. Robinhood Crypto is licensed to engage in virtual currency business activity by the New York State Department of Financial Services. Crypto held through Robinhood Crypto is not FDIC insured or SIPC protected. Investing involves risk, including loss of principal. Securities trading is offered through an account with Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC, a registered broker-dealer.
Welcome to the 10-12, the podcast that covers all 16 teams in the Big 12 conference. I'm your host, Phillip Levitt. Thank you for joining us today. We're, of course, partners with Sports Social. It's been a minute since I've done this, and so I should have this intro memorized perfectly. And yet, I am tired after 2 days of travel and a day in Wisconsin, and then a day at work. I'm sleepy, and my brain is functioning as best as it can, okay? And you know when you're gone for a few days, if you have kids, how the kids always are. And bless them, sweet children. We're back. Again, this is episode 601. We're here. And joining me today to do something I don't typically do before the season, but it felt appropriate this year, is our good friend Joe Broback. Joe, welcome back, man.
Thank you for having me. I'm always excited to be back, and it feels like it's been a while.
It has. It's been too long. Usually I do a lot more during the summer, and this year I kind of took the summer off, and so, I was like, well, but I had to get you on before the season started. Like I can't kick off a college football season and not get you on. So
we'll take it.
All right, that's good. I appreciate that. For all those who, I'm going to kill the mic or the camera because I think it's going to help with some lag. And we're not going to use the video anyways, and no one needs to see my face. There we go. Okay. So Joe is here today, who does a incredible job doing team previews throughout the summer on YouTube. If you haven't watched those before, go find Joe on YouTube and watch some of those. He's got some great ones for Big 12 teams. Today we're going to talk quarterbacks. I don't usually do quarterbacks in the off season. I like to talk offensive lines and linebackers and receiving cores and running backs, but to me, this is the year of the told you, brain fart. This is the year of the quarterback in the Big 12. After a bit of a down year last year and a couple years where, we've had good quarterbacks in Big 12. Don't get me wrong. We haven't had a collection of quarterbacks that are as exciting heading into a year in a while that I think we do in the Big 12 this year. Whereas last year, it felt like it was going to be a conference that was decided by running backs, and I think that held true. I really do. I think this year it's about quarterback play and which quarterbacks are ready for the moment, which quarterbacks are going to be able to put their team on their shoulder and carrying them to Arlington, which quarterbacks are going to be taking the steps forward from what we've seen in the past few years to elevate their game and lead their team to success. And so it felt like this was the year to definitely talk about quarterbacks. There's a lot of quarterbacks to talk about, not just because there's 16 teams in this conference, but because I really do think, Joe, I want to start there, your thoughts on just the depth of quarterback in the Big 12 this year. And it really feels like, that you're not, when it comes to Heisman talk, we're going to hear the usual candidates from the usual programs, but it really feels like the quarterbacks in the Big 12, this is the deepest crop of starting quarterbacks I think I've seen in a while. And that doesn't even include the ones we don't know are going to show up yet.
Yeah, I think it's funny because you look at last year and it not really quarterback related, but the Heisman Trophy winner comes from the Big 12. The runner-up comes from the Mountain West. And it's almost like the national media is like, all right, well, we got to get this back on track. Let's talk SEC and Big Ten again, because we can't have that happen. But the Big 12 is in, I think, a really good position because they have so much talent at this position. The quarterback position is stacked this year. And I think when you look back at when we've talked about the Big 12 in the past and what made it so exciting was, we talked about, the joke was that the Big 12 couldn't play defense. And it really had more to do with the talent on offense. You had studs at quarterback. And I don't know if we get back to that, but there are plenty of guys that could make that happen.
Yeah, I'm excited. And I'm excited to talk about some of them. I think we have to start with the guy who's the near consensus national Big 12 quarterback number one, Sam Leavitt at Arizona State. And I don't necessarily disagree, but I feel like everyone always has the same problem. They're doing the same thing with quarterback they do with the teams every year, which is, all right, who was good last year? Who was on a good team? Who made it to Arlington, right? Okay, well, we're just going to pencil them in because everyone's figured out we have no idea how to pick the Big 12. We don't know where players are going to come from because it is such a developmental league and players come from all over the place. You don't know who's going to pop. Last year, Arizona State was picked 16th. I mean, perfect way to start us off. Cam Scatabo coming from an FCS team. No one knew who he was. And Sam Leavitt was very good last year, and he's a guy who had played a little bit at Michigan State the year prior before he transferred in, and he had a really solid year for Arizona State. But you look at Sam Leavitt this year, Cam Scatabo's gone. Cam Scatabo accounted for more than a third of Arizona State's offensive yardage, a third of their touchdowns. He's gone. And I like what they brought in from the transfer portal, but it really is a situation where this is Sam Leavitt's show. And I think he's got probably the best wide receiver in the Big 12 heading into the year in Jordan Tyson, who I think is set to be, it would not surprise me if Jordan Tyson was the statistical wide receiver one in college football this year, just because, I mean, he's going to get as many opportunities as he wants, unless there's no one else to pull DBs and safeties away from him. But I'm curious your thoughts on Leavitt from what we saw last year. This is a big ask from him to me, based off of you're not going to have Cam Scatabo this year to be the safety blanket. For him to be the guy and to keep Arizona State in the running for the Big 12 championship, I just feel like that's a big ask from him this year.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I think a lot of people, you mentioned that Arizona State kind of came out of nowhere. No one really expected them to be any good. It was kind of the same thing with Sam Leavitt. Yes, you bring him from Michigan State, but I bet you if you go back and look at how people were evaluating him, there weren't people that were talking about him as a top 5 quarterback in this league. And he obviously benefits from a good running back, but I think he did a lot of exciting things as well. He threw for over 2,800 yards, 24 touchdowns. His legs are something we don't talk about a ton, and it wasn't like Arizona State asked him to use them a lot, but he can definitely run the football. You have Jordan Tyson coming back. You also have a tight end in Shimon Mateer that doesn't get talked about enough. So I think it was a nice combination of guys that were flying under the radar, and they just kind of fed off each other's energy in a way and played really well together. Now, they also, I think, benefited a lot from having pretty much, I wouldn't want to say a full clean bill of health, but they were pretty healthy last year too. So that definitely was a factor. You're right, though. Sam Leavitt is going to have to do a little bit more this year. You don't have that go-to running back. Everything that I've heard is that the running back room is still going to be just fine. It just won't be one guy running the show. You bring in Kanye Udo from Army. You have Kyson Brown and Raleek Brown coming back. So you have plenty of talent. It's not really a question of that. It'll be just really who are going to be his guys outside of Tyson, because the one thing that we've learned in college football is that if you have a good year, teams are going to try to take you away. So how do you develop your passing attack if teams are going to try to naturally take away Jordan Tyson? Bringing Shimon Mateer back is big. You also bring in Jalen Moss from the transfer portal. So I think that Leavitt's going to have plenty of options. I feel confident in what he can do. I think we saw some good things from him last year, and especially in some of those bigger games, especially in the playoff, I saw enough for me to feel confident that if he needs to do more, that he can.
Yeah, look, I remember before the season us being like, I don't even know who's going to be the starter at Arizona State. Maybe it's him. We'll see. Because there was nothing. There just wasn't enough there to be like having strong opinions about how good he was going to be. And I do think he had a really good season, and it got overshadowed by Cam Scatterbo. And I think we spoke highly of him as the season progressed. But it is asking a guy to take a big step. And we're not saying that he can't. It's just that we have to acknowledge is the guy who is almost a consensus number one quarterback in the Big 12. Do you think that's fair? Do you think he is, heading into the year, the guy you would put at quarterback number one in the Big 12?
I think if you do, I would definitely put him in that conversation. I think I might be higher on a couple other guys besides him. It all kinds of depends on your situation. Like Sam Leavitt may not be, to some people, the most talented quarterback, but part of being a quarterback is the guys around you. So if you have proven talent, that puts him up there. I would definitely say that the gap between the top guys is not that high. So whether it's Sam Leavitt or someone else, the gap between him and the second best guy, or if he's not first, the gap between him and the first best guy is really not that big. So I would say maybe I'm higher on some other guys, but if you have an argument for Sam Leavitt as QB1 in this conference, I'm not really going to argue against you.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that's fair. All right, so you said maybe a couple other guys. Why don't you lead us there? Because I have a feeling that those guys are the same ones that we kind of prepped for this conversation. Where would you go as far as guy you might pick over Sam Leavitt?
So if he is healthy, I think that Behren Morton has the chance to be the best quarterback in the Big 12. Now, that being said, that's a big if, right? He has had injuries his entire career. And one of the things that I think people were kind of just doing in the offseason is whenever you had a big time transfer quarterback hit the portal, it was automatically, well, Texas Tech should get him. They need a quarterback. And it's like, they don't need a starting quarterback. They need a backup. And you're not going to bring in a big time quarterback and tell Behren Morton, hey, we're going to have you compete for this job. It's just a matter of something that sometimes is just out of his control. Now, I would have liked to see them obviously bring in some depth at that position, but when he is healthy, and especially once again with the talent around him, this is a guy who could be phenomenal this year. And if he can stay healthy, then Texas Tech, along with their spending, they are going to be a really fun team to watch, but they do have to see him stay healthy. And that's been a big question. But even with his uncertainty health-wise, he still threw for 3,300 yards and 27 touchdowns. So if he stays healthy for a full year, he's going to shred the Big 12.
All right, you are the first person I've talked to who has been this high on Behren Morton. And look, I love Morton time. I do. It's just like the health, obviously. But let's set the health aside. I mean, that's kind of been the conversation about Texas Tech. When you hear the national media, it's like they've got all these guys, the talent's there, and then there's Behren Morton. And maybe they should have gone out and gotten somebody to replace him, somebody better than him. Maybe that's where they really should have spent the dollars in it. And you are telling me that you are all in on Behren Morton if he can stay healthy. You are the first person I think I've had that I have spoken with who is that high, even like Texas Tech fans. Like, they're not going to bash Behren Morton, but they're not going to get out there and, like, one man in a crowd defend him, it doesn't feel like. So what is it about Behren Morton that you just like so much? Health aside, of course.
Yeah, so health, I mean, that's the big thing. And I know people are gonna be like, well, he can't stay healthy. I'm like, I do understand that. We're going to take that and put it to the side because obviously if he's not healthy, he's not playing. But and again, I don't necessarily know if he is the most talented quarterback in this conference. When I watch him play, he fits the system so well. He's comfortable in his reads. He understands the progressions, and he has the talent to get open too. So it's not like Texas Tech puts him in a ton of positions where they say, hey, we're going to need you to make some big time throws play after play. They dial up things really well for him. And sometimes that's what makes you a really good quarterback. I mean, coaching is part of this too. So you have to have the right guy who understands the system. You also have to have the arm talent to definitely do that. But I think at his peak, when he's playing his best, and once again, when he is healthy, he is one of the best quarterbacks in this conference. Now, again, like I said before, the gap between Levitt and Behren Morton or somebody else that we're going to talk about here in a little bit, is not huge. And there are other things that maybe he doesn't do as well as some of these guys. He's not going to run the football. That's not really going to be something that they're asking him to do. And he doesn't have the wheels to necessarily be an effective runner. Maybe he'll pick up a first down here and there, but he is primarily going to be that guy that is a gunslinger that distributes the ball all over the field. But I think that people are just overlooking him because they just have that, okay, well, he has injury issues, let's move on. And that maybe affects his arm talent and what he can do. But again, when he is healthy, he's really fun to watch.
To your point, his completion percentage has gone up each year, despite attempts continuing to rise, right? His touchdown to interception ratio has increased drastically each year, and his quarterback rating has gone up each year. So each year he has gotten better and better. Last year, 63.3% completion percentage, 3,300 yards, 27 touchdowns to 8 interceptions, a 139.1 quarterback rating. Like, he's gotten better each year. This could be the year where we're like, all right, it's not fair, I think, maybe because it's just injury related to some extent, but I like me some Morton time. I do. Okay. Look, I have said on the record that I have my Big 12 championship pick, the one I'm just going to make because we have to make one, is we're going to get the Butt Bowl because it's not happening in the regular season. So we're going to see Texas Tech versus Baylor. And I can't think of a better situation to not have the Butt Bowl in regular season and get it there in Arlington. And part of that is because obviously what Texas Tech has built up. But over at Baylor is Sawyer Robertson, who I am very high on heading into this season. And it's interesting because I don't think Sawyer Robertson's crop of weapons is on par with Texas Tech's, and I don't think his crop of weapons is on par with Arizona State's either. Not, it may be deeper than Arizona State's, but he doesn't have a Jordan Tyson. I do like Bryson Washington at running back. I think he's pretty good. What are your thoughts on Sawyer Robinson heading into this year? My biggest question, of course, is a wide receiver one, a true dude, not just a guy, but a dude. But what are your thoughts on Robinson heading into the year?
Yeah, so this is what kind of like, again, there's probably 5 guys, 6 guys maybe at the top that, like, if it's like 1A, 1B, 1C, it just everybody's kind of just at the top there. I think a lot of people would probably argue that Sawyer Robertson's a more talented quarterback than a Behren Morton and then probably than Sam Leavitt. There's probably plenty of people that believe that, and it's easy to see why when you watch him play. Has the arm talent to make those deep throws, but like you said, I think the wide receiver position is going to be one that has to step. Now, Josh Cameron is coming back. I believe Ashton Hawkins is back as well in his 9th year of college football. And I think my biggest complaint about Baylor's passing attack is that Josh Cameron is going to be their top receiver probably, and he wears number 34. And while I do admire trying to be different, that just looks so disgusting on a wide receiver. It's just not a good look, but do you, I guess, I do think that they bring in some talent that makes things a little bit more intriguing. So you have some options. You bring in Kobe Prentice from Alabama, Cole Wilson from Texas State, Lewis Brown IV from Colorado State. So you have guys that I have the talent to make this a really good receiving group. And then also you have Michael Trigg coming back. So you have a good group of wide receivers and tight ends that can make his life easier. But I think one of the things is that this offense should be pretty balanced with that tandem at running back. So Sawyer Robertson probably will put up good numbers and he'll be really fun to watch. He'll be super talented, but it's just going to come down to what criteria is everybody going to use for who's the best quarterback? Are you purely looking at the guy and what can he do talent wise, or are you putting everything together, or are you purely looking at stats? It kind of depends on what lens you're looking through, because all of these guys have an argument for QB1. It's just a matter of how you view them or what lens you're using. But Sawyer Robertson is definitely going to be up there. He's definitely going to be fun. And if he does get that wide receiver 1, even if he is wearing a disgusting number, that's still going to be a fun year. I mean, that's just terrible. 34, it'd be one thing when people are like, oh, when a safety wears something in the 40s, it's like, that looks natural. A wide receiver wearing 34, it's like, it feels like we're back in the 1950s, and it's just everybody's wearing 30s and 40s at wide receiver and running back. And it's just, I don't know. It's weird. Get a new number, please.
I'm gonna make a guess here that to fill out your kind of top 5 or 6 guys you've been. As we said, we've talked about Sawyer Robertson, we've talked about Sam Leavitt, we've talked about Behren Morton. Stop me when you say we've hit the end of the list. Rocco Becht at Iowa State, Avery Johnson at Kansas State, Devin Dampier, Utah.
I'd put Josh Hoover in over Devin Dampier. I'd probably put Josh Hoover higher than Rocco Becht and Avery Johnson. I think that at his peak, talent-wise, system-wise, that's where I'd put him. Devin Dampier could be really good. I don't really know what we're going to get from him as a passer. It's really just going to be like, does he fit that Utah offense, and does he take a step as a passer? I mean, he threw 12 picks last year, so you got to fix that. But there's no denying how good he is as a runner. So that's one where it's like, he's probably that second tier, if you will. And that's probably where I draw the line.
I think that's fair. I think he can have success at Utah just because of Utah's defense. It is going to be very interesting to see somebody of his style with his offensive coordinator out on a team where I don't feel like they're going to enjoy some of his playing it by ear. We'll see how that looks.
To you, my darling.
No, to you.
The Roses were living the dream.
More champagne for me, please.
Until it all came crashing down.
You got fired.
Fired?
From the director of Meet the Parents.
You're a failure. Women don't like that.
If you need a shoulder or an inner thigh to lean on.
On August 29th.
I just want the house.
We want everything.
Wow. Stop.
Yes, go!
And see The Roses.
These people.
The Roses. Rated R. Under 17, not a minute without parent. In theaters everywhere, August 29th.
I love that you mentioned Josh Hoover. TCU feels like the team. And look, when you have 16 teams, there's lots of teams who fly on the radar, depending upon what you hear. TCU and Josh Hoover feel like the team and the quarterback who might be flying under the radar as far as have real potential to make noise in the Big 12 and be contending in November. There's another team I'll talk about in a minute, but I think the quarterback gets a lot of conversation. What is it about Josh Hoover? Because I'm kind of on board with this. I'm not ready to pick them to make it Darlington. I don't even think I can pick them in the top 4 or 5. But like, I would perfectly fine with TCU sitting there at 6th, kind of just like biding their time. What is it about Josh Hoover that makes you go, I got to put this guy in the top group? Because I have seen a couple publications have Josh Hoover as their Big 12 QB number 1 heading into the season.
Yeah, I mean, you do lose 2 of your big time players to the NFL draft, so that's going to hurt. But the guy threw for nearly 4,000 yards last year and 27 touchdowns. It's just, you just don't do that by accident, right? And even if you're in a good system, you still need the right quarterback in play. And say what you want about Kendall Daniels, but that dude knows how to call an offense, and he understands what his team's strengths are, and he understands what his quarterback's strengths are. And I don't have any doubts that he is going to figure that out this year. I think that he is going to have another good year and another good year with his quarterback, despite some of the talent they need to replace. Now, you do return Eric McAllister. That's a guy who's explosive through and through, so he could have even better production, which would be really exciting. You bring in Joseph Manjack from Houston. That's a guy who doesn't wear gloves, which is just unheard of nowadays. I don't know if that's going to change at TCU, but even without the gloves, this kid makes ridiculous catches. If you go watch, this is going to sound like, if you're like a diehard fan, it's like, go watch Joseph Manjack highlights from his time at Houston. Like, if you're truly a sicko, it's like, go watch this random wide receiver from Houston, who, by the way, played on an offense that averaged like 14 points per game. Go watch him, though. He's really fun. Like, he's crazy for not wearing gloves. Maybe that'll change, but he is someone that could be really fun as well. But Josh Hoover just understands, like, he's comfortable in this offense. He makes good decisions for the most part. You know, he had 11 picks last year, so you want to see those numbers reduced, but he completed nearly 67% of his passes. He's very comfortable in this Kendall Daniels system. And, you know, people say that Bryle's system is just such a cheat code for quarterbacks, that you almost have to like give Josh Hoover that bump just because you know he's in a system that's very quarterback friendly. There's talent around him to make plays. And TCU, you're right. TCU is that team that's kind of like on the outside looking in. So there's a chance that, yeah, they could potentially go 9-3, 10-2, but there's also a chance that they're fairly average and go 6-6. That's kind of just the nature of what TCU feels like they've been under Sonny Dykes. You know, one year they're playing for a national championship and getting it destroyed, but the next year they're struggling mightily and then they bounce back. So you just don't really know what you're going to get from TCU. But one of the nice things about the offseason is that you're just like building the hype around certain guys, and whether it's justified or not, it's just really fun. Josh Hoover is one of those guys. He's in the right system. He has the talent. He has the decision making, and I think he has the talent around him to make him really good this year.
The other team I want to transition to is Iowa State, because look, since the Big 12 title game came back, only Oklahoma has gone to back-to-back Big 12 title games, and that was during OU's peak. It's just not a thing that happens because the way this conference works, of tiebreaker scenarios now is 16 teams. And for Rocco Becht, you just lost 2 NFL wide receivers. I know they brought in a couple of transfers who people are pretty high on, and they bring back some solid tight ends. You can always expect a good tight end at Iowa State. But it really does feel like a year after Rocco Becht kind of took a step back statistically. And I think a lot of that has to do with an offensive coordinator who wanted him to throw the ball downfield more, and that wasn't really his strength. I'm curious your thoughts on Rocco, because for Iowa State to stay in contention again, to have another historic, double-digit win season, it feels like he, kind of like we talked about with Sam Leavitt, is going to have to take a step forward because, again, bring in some nice wide receivers out of the portal. Tight ends are good, but he's if he's going to continue to play in this scheme, he's going to have to show that he can complete those deep balls and he can increase his accuracy on those. I'm curious your thoughts on Rocco. And it's so funny. Like Sam Leavitt's the guy everyone's in love with because, made the Big 12 title game and coming back and has Jordan Tyson. And I feel like him and Rocco are kind of in similar situation of both guys have to take a step forward to kind of fill the void left by some players who are now in the NFL. And everyone's all in on Sam Leavitt doing it, but not so much, it seems, on Rocco Becht doing so.
Yeah, and it's tough because again, it's not, part of it is the quarterback themselves, and part of it is the situation that they're in. So Rocco obviously has, the NFL lineage with his dad and whatnot, and you have the talent that you saw last year. You saw what happens when it works, right? You have 2,000-yard receivers that make him look really good, and not to say that Rocco Becht didn't have a part of that, but having good receivers makes you a better quarterback. And that sounds cliche and sounds super obvious, but that's very true. And the success that they had last year, I mean, they won 11 games. I believe it was the first time they ever won double-digit games in their history, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
Yeah, like that.
Correct.
So it's one thing where it's like, well, you've never done that, and now all of a sudden you did it. Are we going to expect you to sustain that success? Probably not, because history tells us that you're not going to do it again, but you don't really know. I think Rocco has the talent to be a consistent passer and be better, but this year is going to look different. He doesn't have that reliable player right now at wide receiver that he knows, well, I need 7 yards. Here's who I'm going to. I need this guy to run this route, and I know one of 2 guys is going to do that for me. You bring in certain players, like Chase Sewell at ECU was a deep play threat for the Pirates, but that's not something that they really want Rocco Becht doing a ton. I think they'd rather see him get in a rhythm, make those short to intermediate throws, and supplement with that deep ball. But I think the fact that you have to replace such reliable players is where you have those concerns. Now, if the tight ends are part of that and they're reliable, then great. But you have really more questions, maybe not concerns, but you have more questions right now with that passing attack. So it's quarterback plus the situation he's in. I like Rocco Becht. I think he can be more accurate, but I like the arm talent. But he also has to find new weapons, and that's going to take some time. And the fact that you have to play Kansas State right off the bat is going to mean that you are either ready for that or you're going to struggle.
I think the fact that they open the season in Ireland against Kansas State makes this for a perfect transition to Avery Johnson. Coming into last year, that was the name. That was the hype guy. Everyone's super excited to see what he's going to do. Kansas State fans are convinced he's the next, like, Joe Burrow. He's going to be the most incredible thing ever. And he had a good season. I mean, set a school record 25 touchdown passes. Like, he had a good year, but completion percentage below 60. We really want to be in the 60s to be one of the best guys. 10 interceptions, multi-interception games that really cost them last year, including losses to Arizona State and Houston, just some tough games. Look, it was his first year as a starter. He's a true junior, so it's just his third year, second year really playing under center. They didn't utilize his legs very much last year, or at least not as much as I think Kansas State fans would have liked, or as much as we kind of thought they might heading into the year. Do you feel like Avery Johnson is going to take a step forward this year? Matt Wells kind of set in as his quarterback coach. Like, you would like to see it. Like, you would think this would happen. You expect, okay, second year as a starter, you should see a big step forward. And if we see a big step forward from Avery Johnson, then I think Kansas State's in Arlington playing for the Big 12 title game. I'm just curious, after what we saw last year, how much of a step forward do you feel like we can expect from him this year?
That's a good question. I think it's tough because whenever you're looking at Avery Johnson's more of that, like, athletic quarterback that's still learning how to be an effective passer. And there's part of me that believes that if you're going to take a quarterback like that and say, hey, we want you to be better as a passer, you almost have to take away his opportunities to run. And it sounds weird to say that when that's his strength, but some of these guys that come in and they know what their legs are capable of doing, they don't tend to take those risks or, challenge their abilities as a passer because they know, hey, I can just run for it. Well, long term, that's not a great decision if you want your quarterback to develop and also to have your team win football games. So in a way, I do like that. And, I'm always hesitant because ever since the whole disaster with Khalil Tate at Arizona, when they decided that, hey, this dude that just ran for whatever it was, like 1,500 yards, let's turn him into a pocket passer and let's make sure that he doesn't run. It's, to this day, don't get me wrong, there are college football coaches that are way smarter than I am and obviously know what they're doing. But that was, to me, one of the weirdest things in college football history. You take a guy who's electric, and it's one thing to just scale it back, right? Like, you want him to be more of a passer, but you don't take away the one thing he's really good at. And Arizona decided, we don't want to be good on offense. Let's just take away our best option. Rant over. But Avery Johnson, I like that they kind of did that in a way, but they didn't purely say, like, Avery, you're never running the ball again. Like, we understand that your legs are still a big component of this offense, and they would be stupid to not use him that way. But short term, that's smart to be able to, like, hey, if you need to take off and run, obviously run, but they want him to develop as a passer because they truly understand that if they're going to win the Big 12, if they're going to make a college football playoff run, Avery Johnson's going to have to make tough throws. He's going to have to be in clutch situations and be able to deliver or hit those tight window throws. He has guys that can get open, but when it comes down to it, when you're facing really good competition, you need a quarterback that's confident that they can make certain throws because there's not going to be room for them to run because they're going to get swarmed. They only have one option, which is throwing. And if they're not putting him in those positions early and often, then it's just not going to work. So I think that what we saw last year was truly some growing pains, but you also did see some good things. So I do think that he takes a step. It still might take a little bit of time for him to truly get comfortable, especially when you start the year with Iowa State. That defense is always going to give everybody trouble. It doesn't matter who you are. And if you're a quarterback that's really trying to build your confidence as a passer, it's not the most ideal game to start with, but it'll at least give you an idea of, here are the kind of games that we need you to help us in. And if you're able to make those throws, we're in a good position. So I do think that he takes a step forward, and you're going to see that if he does take that step as a passer, his running numbers are going to be way better because he's going to be more efficient with the amount of times that he runs, and people will have to respect his arm so much that when he does run, there's going to be a ton of space for him to take off and just gash defenses.
In 3 of Kansas State's 4 losses last season, Avery Johnson threw 1 touchdown and 6 interceptions.
Oof.
I mean, that for as good as he was last year, 3 of their 4 losses, BYU, Houston, and Arizona State, are very much on him turning the ball over. Other things, obviously, still. But when you have losses like that, and those are your performances as a quarterback, that's the thing you're going to point to. And so if he can mitigate those mistakes, if he can limit those, the ceiling is very high for Kansas State today. It's very much, and look, you would like to think that a quarterback can make those improvements. But it's also hard to see after a year like that, him not having at least one game where you go, whoops, there's all Avery. Let's hope he doesn't do that again. As we get past the kind of that top tier, there's 2 guys who people were very high on in the Big 12 that now we've all just kind of been like, yeah, all right. One of them, of course, is Jalen Daniels, who terrible first half of the season with an offensive coordinator he did not mesh well with. They made him an OC hire. New OC in for Kansas now. They were arguably the hottest team in college football to end the season until they lost to Baylor and couldn't get their 6th win. But I mean, 5 straight wins, including I think 3 in a row over ranked teams, if I recall the schedule correctly. It was nuts. And so we head into the season, and there's not much buzz for Jalen Daniels. And he played all of last year. It wasn't health related. It was other issues. And at a certain point, all the hype around Jalen Daniels has kind of turned into, when are we actually going to see this? Because if it's not health, it was a bad OC, it was a wild. We see some blips here and there. Or is it time to kind of sell our Jalen Daniels stock heading into the season? Or do you think we still could finally see the Jalen Daniels we've all been wanting to see ever since, he comes in and knocks off Texas?
Yeah, I think if you still have Jalen Daniels stock, you're kind of just like hanging on until the end. You're riding that roller coaster until it crashes, right? And
I will not sell my Radio Shack stock. I won't do it.
Your Blockbuster stock while you're at it too.
Yes,
like Jalen Daniels is just, I don't know. He's just one of those, like, it's hard because it's almost like if you're invested in Jalen Daniels, it's almost like an emotional investment because he's so charismatic. Like if you watch Big 12 Media Days this year, like he's just a goofball off the field. Like he's looking like he has so much fun. Like life's not too serious for him. And you've seen the glimpses of what he can do on the field. And there's part of you that it's almost like, well, I've seen it and I've been there and I experienced it and I know it's there, but I just can't let it go, even though I haven't seen it in like a year and a half. And at this point, if you're still invested, you're not selling ever. You're just going to ride that until the ride is over. And yeah, there's been a lot of things. I didn't like the Jeff Grimes hire, honestly, by Lance Leipold. I really didn't like that Luke Fickell decided that he wanted to bring in Jeff Grimes, even though I think that technically fits into maybe what they want to do a little bit more. But this isn't the Big 10 podcast. We're talking Big 12, but I just didn't think that was a great fit. Now I do have to give him credit. They did find some things that worked. I think towards the end of the year, they at least looked a little bit better, but overall it was not a good experience. Now you feel like with the new change at coordinator that Daniel should be a little more comfortable. Maybe they're doing things that are similar to what he was doing 2 years ago, but there's just so many things with him that's, is there going to be an injury that comes into play? Is there going to be something with the talent around him, that kind of stuff? Devin Moore is gone. That's going to be a really tough guy to replace. You have new wide receivers that are coming in after having the 3 that you had for what felt like forever. And I think that there are things that you could say he would get better, but he's one of those, I'm just going to enjoy the ride. I'm just going to watch it. If he has a good year, then great. Am I predicting it? No, but I will definitely pay attention if it's happening.
I think that's fair. They promoted quarterback coach Jim Zebrowski to offensive coordinator. He was co-OC last year. I think there's been a little bit of debate as to how much of the second half of the season credit goes to Zebrowski versus Grimes. but obviously it's somebody that Jalen is familiar with, being his quarterback coach while he's been there. And so I definitely think it's something from a relationship standpoint. I would hope they have a good enough ability to communicate that they can find some success. I mean, it's going to be an interesting season for Kansas. And I would love to see Jalen Daniels go out having a really nice year for them. We'll just have to see. The other guy over at Arizona, Noah Fafita, huge year before they joined the Big 12. His coach leaves. Brent Brennan comes in. Arizona tries to make Brent Brennan just do everything that was already being done beforehand, square peg and triangle hole, and it was a real bad year. Now we have year 3 for Noah Fafita at Arizona. And at one point I thought, we all thought for sure he was going to leave, and then he didn't. I mean, is this just a situation of, I think almost kind of like Jalen Daniels to some extent, we got really excited about what could be, and it may just always be kind of a what could have been situation?
Yeah, I think part of it too is, we talk about situations, and when you have Teteroa McMillan, I think naturally you're just going to increase the stock that you have in their quarterback. And when you're throwing to a guy who makes literally every catch look effortless, you're going to say, oh, well, the quarterback's got to be good, right? Like, he's throwing to him, he's giving him opportunities. And it's like, no, I think McMillan was just a stud on a team that was not very good. And when you look at the numbers in terms of catches, the discrepancy between the difference between McMillan and Chris Hunter, who I think was the next top guy, was just astounding. Like, it was just crazy. So McMillan being gone makes me a little bit more concerned. The one thing I will say is, I think at times that Fafita was just like, okay, well, where's number 4? I know that if I throw it to him, I have a good chance of completing a pass. And that doesn't really help you as a quarterback. Like, yeah, it helps you complete that pass, but it builds a habit of, well, when I get in trouble, I'm just going to look for the guy that I know is either open or is going to make a play, even if he's not. So this year, we're, I think, going to actually see if Fafita can be a solid QB, or if it was truly McMillan that was making him what he was. So I don't see a step forward. I think it's really tough for Brent Brennan to be in this situation. I think Arizona has a lot of work to do. I think that they're also in big trouble when they play Hawaii, but we'll get into that obviously when we get to week 1. But this could be, I'm very high in Hawaii. I'll just say that. So maybe that's, like, again, my excitement for that team. Right now, Noah Fafita hasn't really shown me that he can be a quarterback that goes through his progressions, and the numbers kind of show that. He looked for McMillan any chance that he got. And don't get me wrong, like, it's like if I'm playing as Arizona in college football 25, like, I'm always going to look for number 4. I know he's going to make plays. Like, that's just common sense. But when it comes to long term, if you take a step back and look at the big picture, I don't see him as a quarterback that is going through his progressions very consistently. He's typically going first read, and usually that was to McMillan. So how are you going to do that when he's not there? Now, you do have interesting players coming in via the portal, but none of them are McMillan. None of them are going to be that go-to guy. So if he proves me wrong and he can be more of a second and third progression type of quarterback, then great. But this offense could be fairly predictable if he's not able to do that.
Love it. I love it.
Lowe's knows when you're looking for reliability, the right brand makes all the difference. And now, Lowe's is the exclusive home improvement retailer for the Whirlpool water treatment line, including their Wi-Fi softener, under-sink filtration system, and more. With Whirlpool's proven performance and our everyday low prices, better tasting, better quality water is within reach. Shop pro-trusted brands like Whirlpool and more, in-store or online. Lowe's, we help, you save.
Last guy I really want to spend a little bit of time on, then we'll kind of wrap up just with an overview of their manners, is, I think, an under-the-radar quarterback who did impress me, especially early on last season, in Brendan Sorsby at Cincinnati. Now, please understand this. I like Cincinnati's roster. I like Brendan Sorsby. I do not like Scott Satterfield or his coaching staff. And I think if you put an actual, a mid-level coaching staff in Cincinnati, they would have a really nice season. What are your thoughts on Brendan Sorsby and a Cincinnati team that everyone remember lost their last 5 games in a row and finished with a losing record because of it?
Yeah, that was a hire that I wasn't super excited about.
Is anyone? Is anybody?
Yeah, I think that's a very fair point. Obviously Satterfield knows a little bit about coaching. He knows how to win games and whatnot, but there's obviously levels to this, right? And I think that Louisville was not unhappy to see him leave. They were okay with that. And Cincinnati is almost kind of in the same territory to a point where it's like, if they don't make a bowl game this year, do we start having that conversation about moving on from him? That's going to be a big question, I think. But I do think they have some really exciting talent. And Sorsby is, like you said, he's one of those guys kind of flying under the radar, completed 64% of his passes, threw for over 2,800 yards, 18 touchdowns. Another guy that doesn't use his legs a ton, but he's still fun to watch when he can take off. The question for him is, who's going to be the go-to guy? Who's going to be someone that steps up for him? You have a lot of new faces that are coming into the program. Maybe tight end Joe Royer is that guy. I don't really know, but you bring in like Cyrus Allen from Texas A&M, Caleb Goody from Colorado State, and then Lindenwood transfer Jeff Caldwell's 6'5", averaged 19.5 yards per catch for Lindenwood last year. So you have some options. You just don't know who they're going to be. But Cincinnati is kind of flying under the radar this year, and I think we're going to know pretty quickly, especially when they play Nebraska early on. That's really going to tell us if this team is actually going to surprise us or if we truly, have a pulse on that team. But again, I don't necessarily know if Scott Satterfield is the answer. Typically what we saw at Louisville is not a pass happy team. And I don't feel like Brendan Sorsby is a guy that you really want to run the football a ton, but you do need to put him in positions to be successful. I don't know. It's just one of those, I feel like average at best, but I'll be pleasantly surprised if they exceed expectations, which is not a way I want to feel about a team, but that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, no, I like Sorsby. Honestly, I think Scott Satterfield and staff costs that team like 2 wins a season on average. He's going to get to 6 wins and the AD is going to extend him and everyone's going to go, thanks, Cincinnati. All right. Let me kind of run through the rest of the people that are expected to start where we don't know. Obviously Connor Weigman at Houston. We believe Caden Salter at Colorado, Taven Jackson at UCF, and then whoever gets the starting jobs at West Virginia, BYU, and Oklahoma State. I think there's some leans on those, but nothing official that I know of at this particular moment. Of the rest of the guys, who could be this year's Sam Leavitt? The guy that we just don't see, the guy under the radar, the guy who comes in and we just kind of go, we don't have high expectations for, but then not necessarily gets his team to a Big 12 title game because that would also require a Cam Scatterbo, but kind of comes out of the rest of the heap and ends up being a really good quarterback that kind of surprises us all.
Man, that's a good question. I think that you look at what Sam Leavitt was. He had some talent. We saw some production, right? So he's not like he came completely out of nowhere, but relatively did. So in a way that kind of eliminates Hillstead at BYU, anybody at Oklahoma State, and then West Virginia situation. So you're kind of left with Caden Salter, but Salter's, kind of more proven. The situation at Liberty wasn't great. We tried to transfer to Auburn and whatnot. So I think that just leaves Connor Weigman, and Weigman's situation at Texas A&M didn't play out how we thought it was going to. And it's really weird because when we talk about recruiting, so many people were excited for him to come to Texas A&M, and they talked about he has all these traits. And then it was as soon as he started struggling, it was just yep, that makes sense. And it was well, wait a minute, weren't we just talking about how good he was? And now all of a sudden he's trash. I don't know. It's just really weird. That whole recruiting, when they look at how they're going to translate to the NFL, but they're going to college, that always just confuses me. But Weigman's a guy who I'm on really random rants apparently today, but that's, I don't know.
I love it.
It's weird. It's weird, but Wegman's a guy who still has that talent. Like, he didn't just disappear, right? Like, you saw that he had struggles, and I got news for everybody. When you play in the SEC, like, guys are going to struggle. You're playing against really good talent. I don't know why people are just so like, oh, this 4 or 5 star is not playing well. It's like, yeah, he's playing against NFL dudes every week. Like, what do you want him to do? Like, I don't know. It's just so hard to watch that sometimes. But I think that he's in a good situation at Houston. From what everything has been reported, he's put in work in the weight room. He's slimmed down, and everybody kind of expects Willie Fritz to take that step forward this year. So I think that he fits into that category. Do I think that he's going to be Sam Leavitt? No, not by any means, just because there's so much that needs to get better. Again, this is a team that averaged 14 points per game on offense. So a lot has to change. I don't know if Wegman will be Sam Leavitt, but it will be fun. If Houston is having the year that everybody expects them to, it's going to be a big part of it is going to be because Connor Wegman's having a really good year.
Okay, Sam Leavitt was probably a bad comp for this to use.
Kind of similar thing. That's fair. Yeah. But yeah, kind of similar thing.
Yeah. I have no idea what Oklahoma State's going to do. Feels like Hillstead's the guy at BYU, so we'll. I mean, he's at least played. I feel like Nico is probably the guy at West Virginia. Taven Jackson at UCF. Feels like Caden Salter at Colorado, probably over Julian Lewis. Of all these other guys, which one do you feel like? Pick one. We're going to wrap the show on whichever one you feel like you want to talk about. Whoever one that you feel like is going to be the guy at the school we don't know yet. Whichever one you want to take a couple minutes on. Who is it? Who intrigues you?
I think Caden Salter intrigues me just because Colorado just drives so much attention in college football to their program. And you bring in Julian Lewis, who honestly should be a senior in high school this year. And while we are seeing freshmen play more and more, you also see guys that need time. And I think that Caden Salter, his reputation and his image is kind of different than what it's going to be at the end of the year. I think that the situation at Liberty, he wanted to transfer to Auburn and it didn't work out for whatever reason. When that happens and you come back to Liberty, he probably didn't want to be there. His teammates were like, well, why are you still here kind of thing. So I'm sure that affected them. A new situation was needed. I think that Colorado has the staff to figure out how to use Caden Salter effectively. And it's going to be a team that probably runs the football a little bit more, and he has the legs to do it. So I'm excited to see what he can do. I do think that it's his job. I do think Julian Lewis is still going to play, just not as much as maybe people think. So you'll see a couple packages here and there, but Salter to me is the guy in Colorado, and I'm excited to watch him there.
Joe, as always, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. Do me a favor, plug the Joe Broback College Football Show on YouTube.
Yep, Joe Broback CFB. Just look it up. It's pretty easy to spell. And we just wrapped up over, I believe, 70 deep dives, which was really fun to do. And there's a lot more on the way. So I'm excited to put all that up. I do have, we're doing a little bit of career videos as well. So I did Trayvon Boykin first. For anybody who wants to check that out, Tavon Austin is up next. So that's another good one.
Ooh, very nice. Well, you got Trayvon Boykin, Trayvon Austin's coming out. You just recently did deep dives on Cincinnati and Utah. Talked Big 12 win totals. If you're a Big 12 fan, there's plenty of great college football content there on Joe's YouTube channel, but there's also a lot of good Big 12 content. So I would say go to his channel, find your team. If it's not there, be like, Joe, where's my team? Where is it? So I can watch it. It's Joe Broback on all platforms, Broback. Joe, man, it is great to know you. It is a pleasure to chat with you as always. And I promise I will not wait until August of next year before we get you back on again, man.
Sounds good.
podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Prescription products require completion of an online medication consultation with an independent healthcare provider through the LifeMD platform and are only available if prescribed. Subscription required. Individual results may vary. Additional restrictions apply at lifemd.com. Read all warnings before using GLP-1s. Side effects may include a risk of thyroid C-cell tumors. Do not use GLP-1s if you or your family have a history of thyroid cancer.
Confused on where to start with weight loss medication? See the lowest prices available with or without insurance for Wegovy, Zepbound, and more at trylifemd.com. 95% of LifeMD patients said starting their weight loss journey was simple. Listen to Tara's story after losing 42 pounds.
You just take your shot. It doesn't feel like you're on a diet. What I wasn't expecting it to do was to shut off the food noise. I had gone from 237 to 195. This was life-altering, and if I can do it, I feel like anybody can do it.
Get your free insurance benefits check in minutes right now at trylifemd.com. Nearly 96% of patients said they would recommend the LifeMD program to anyone who wants to lose weight. Get started right now at trylifemd.com. That's TRYLIFEMD.com.